Tonight, inflation hits another record high. The cost of living is rising and Scottish retailers are facing what could be their toughest festive season in years.
Currently don't feel happy passing that cost on to the consumer because they're not getting, pay rises and increases. So at the moment I'm taking that hit, but it does make you wonder, a small business like mine, how long can that go on for?
Also making the headlines, let down at their most vulnerable. STV News hears from one abuse survivor who says Scotland's Redress scheme is failing victims.
The Wild West end of Glasgow. We meet a young photographer whose passion for city wildlife has helped her win a prestigious prize.
And mobsters and showgirls take to the stage as Bugsy Malone swings into the capital. I'm Emma Cameron in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. Inflation has yet again hit a record high. It's now sitting at 11.1%, the highest for 41 years. Soaring energy and food costs were the main drivers behind the jump since September.
It comes ahead of the Chancellor's autumn statement tomorrow, where tax rises and spending cuts are expected. With less money making its way to consumers' pockets, retailers are bracing themselves for another tough festive season, as Ivana Holland reports.
Sharing a communal workspace is helping these retailers spread the cost of running a physical shop in Edinburgh. But how does rising inflation impact the viability of the company?
So definitely with gold, because the gold prices has gone up so much, and apart from that, some of our components are from the US and Italy, so the shipping costs and the exchange rate have impact a lot.
Having these long-term pop-ups and residencies have enabled me to have quite a strong returning customer base, increase my revenue, have my online business, and now actually I'm in a situation where I can open a physical store.
Currently don't feel happy passing that cost on to the consumer because they're not getting, pay rises and increases. So at the moment I'm taking that hit, but it does make you wonder, a small business like mine, how long can that go on for?
This is a period known as the Golden Quarter. It's supposed to be an incredibly profitable time for retailers. And in fact, sales are up by 6.3% on last year. But experts say that because inflation is so high, that 6.3 figure doesn't show the full picture. And sales are actually down in every category, online and in store. Wilkie's has been trading since 1898. They've recently announced the closure of 2 stores due to the combination of rising fuel costs of over 8% and the cost of living crisis. They're asking for easier access to COVID recovery grants.
So retailers now have this massive leaps in salaries to find and energies, and there's nothing else really they can kind of tweak, if that makes sense. So making those grants accessible and easy to get to for retailers will mean that there is high streets, left after this kind of cost crisis.
Despite the introduction of the government's energy price guarantee, gas and electricity prices made the biggest impact on October's figures. Food inflation is up to 14.6%. And with the Chancellor's autumn statement tomorrow, belts might just be getting tighter.
There needs to be a focus on helping those who are most in need and, of course, helping our public services who are also dealing with the impacts of inflation. And top of that list, of course, is the National Health Service. So, perhaps a focus tomorrow from the Chancellor on doing the things that people desperately need.
One retail expert feels there is a way to buy our way back into the black.
If every consumer just bought one gift from a local independent this year, it generates 2.7 billion, which would stay in the local economy. So actually, we can shop ourselves out of this to some extent and help our local retailers and local communities as well.
Ivana Holland, STV News.
It was set up to offer compensation and counselling to survivors of historic abuse. But tonight, Scotland's Redress scheme faces accusations of letting them down.
STV News has heard from one applicant who says she's had long delays, and lawyers say more victims are turning to legal action instead. Here's our senior reporter Gordon Cree.
The website of Redress Scotland says survivors are at the heart of the process. Some, though, are finding even getting an application through the system is too slow and too complicated. Rosie was abused during her time in foster care in East Lothian in the 1990s. She says she applied last December and is still waiting on a resolution.
It's just dragging it out. It's just dragging it out, and it's dragging out more because you're constantly thinking every day, like for a year, every day for a year. I've been thinking about this, and I've been thinking, and then that leads you on to thinking about your past. And I just wish it was over and done with.
As part of applying, Rosie was given a large number of documents relating to her case. She told me dealing with that unsupported has been traumatising.
When I got my files, I read about maybe that much of a paragraph, and it took me 3 months to come to terms with what I had read about myself. And it was really, like my mental health went really downhill at that point.
The redress scheme was set up to offer payment, an apology and emotional support to victims and survivors of abuse in care. Figures released under Freedom of Information show the number of applications is falling, and more than 1,000 hadn't been allocated to a named caseworker. Lawyers specialising in this area say there's been a rise in people coming to them feeling let down.
We are seeing an increase in applicants who have started off the redress process themselves but are turning away from it and coming for legal help from us because they've just felt overwhelmed, and the process is far more complicated than perhaps they thought it was going to be.
Applications to the scheme are administered by the Scottish Government and only passed on to the independent body Redress Scotland for a decision once they're completed.
We've doubled the number of caseworkers that are available to make sure that people can get answers and conclusions as quickly as possible. But it will take time for us to work through applications that relate to many, many years of abuse and to resolve those as quickly as we can.
This is where the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry sits. Now, later this month, it will hear final submissions in its investigation into abuse in foster care. There's no direct link between the inquiry and the redress scheme, but given that many people have given evidence here, that's many people who may well need the scheme to work. Gordon Cree, STV News, Edinburgh.
And if you've been affected by the issues in that report, there's a helpline from the National Association for People Abused in Childhood. It's 0808 801 0331. A date has been set for Supreme Court judges to hand down their ruling on whether Holyrood has the power to hold another independence referendum.
Nicola Sturgeon has been pushing for a vote in October next year, but there's been no agreement on this with the UK government, who say the decision cannot be made by the Scottish Parliament. We're live now to our Westminster editor, Catherine Sampson. And Catherine, this judgment is coming earlier than many expected.
Yes, it's coming in 1 week's time, next Wednesday morning, and that will be just 6 weeks on from the initial hearing at the Supreme Court earlier in October. Now, at that time, the Supreme Court senior judge said it would be some months before a ruling could be given, and that there were 8,000 pages of written material to be looked at. So this does seem a relatively fast turnaround. There are a few possible outcomes for next Wednesday. Judges could decide, yes, MSPs can vote to pass a referendum bill. They could say, no, they can't do that. And I must say, the UK government side have been very confident throughout this is a reserved matter. Or the judges could choose not to make a ruling at all. Either way, whatever happens, this expensive process doesn't seem likely to be able to settle this row. Nicola Sturgeon has already said if the Supreme Court ruling doesn't go in her favour, she'll use the next general election as a de facto referendum. Though, of course, that next general election may not come now until perhaps late in 2024. Rishi Sunak, like his predecessors, really has shown no indication he's prepared to grant formal consent.
And Catherine, before we get that ruling, a huge test for the new Prime Minister and his Chancellor tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow the autumn statement is clearly going to be a defining moment for both Rishi Sunak and for Jeremy Hunt. Effectively, they are trying here to restore the Conservatives' credibility. In many ways, they are ripping up much of what Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng did with their mini budget. Now, we're being told it's not all going to be bad news. There, as ever, will be some winners, some losers. We are expecting, for example, the Chancellor will inflation-proof benefits and pensions. On the other hand, expect to see tax rises and spending cuts. For the Scottish Government, of course, they're going to be watching tomorrow closely because they've got to make their own decisions ahead of their budget, which is coming mid-December.
Catherine at Westminster, thank you.
Time now for other stories across Scotland, and there's a concern legal claims are adding pressure to an already squeezed police budget. Almost £5 million was spent on settling claims in the last year, according to figures obtained through a Freedom of Information request. Police Scotland have warned thousands of jobs could be lost over the next 4 years as a result of budget cuts.
The number of inmates in Scotland's prisons who were either untried or not sentenced reached a record level last year. Figures also show around a quarter of prisoners last year were being held on remand. Scotland's prison population now stands at more than 7,500.
All primary and secondary schools in Glasgow and Edinburgh will close next Thursday due to a teachers' strike. It follows the EIS's rejection of a 5% pay offer. Meanwhile, members of the Scottish Secondary Teachers Association have also voted in favour of industrial action, which will take place on the 5th of December.
Patients harmed by a former Dundee surgeon are calling for an inquiry into how he was allowed to continue practising. Sam El-Jamel left dozens of people with life-changing injuries after botched operations, which included the removal of incorrect body parts. He was suspended by NHS Tayside in 2013 after repeated episodes of malpractice. There are now calls for an inquiry into the Health Board's handling of the situation.
I have no life, which obviously goes hand in hand with depression. Sometimes I feel like, what is the point of even being here anymore, because I feel like I'm just existing.
He operated 7 times on my spine. I was always in pain after it. Mr. El-Jamel had operated in the wrong places. He'd put cages in my spine in the wrong place.
Nurses on a busy trauma ward say they feel stuck in a logistical nightmare as they deal with the ongoing pressures on the NHS. STV News has been given access to Aberdeen Royal Infirmary, where staff have described conditions as the most challenging they've ever experienced.
A constant flow of patients mean wards are struggling to cope, and often those who could be discharged remain in hospital beds for weeks on end due to a lack of suitable social care. Brandon Cook has this report.
Early evening at Aberdeen Royal Infirmary. Throughout this hospital, under-pressure staff try their best to meet the needs of every illness or injury. But staff say they're increasingly under pressure and feel stuck in the middle of a logistical nightmare. Patients are waiting longer than ever for one of their beds, yet it's becoming more difficult to free them up.
Getting people in and not being able to move people along as safely as possible is been the biggest problem for us in the last couple of years, really, but particularly I think maybe in the last 6 months it's even got worse.
This means patients like Betty are stuck in wards for longer than they need to be.
It's a few days now since I've thought I'm well enough, yes. But no, I'm fine, I can manage fine now, so I'm a lot better, and I can get about with a Zimmer and that fine, so I can't wait to get him.
The backlog is frustrating, meaning morale is low amongst many staff.
You've been a nurse for 20 years, is this the most challenging you've ever seen it?
Yes, I feel it's more challenging in the way that, I see probably the best question, we do feel stuck in the middle of it. We're all trying to kind of stick together, but it's low because we're coming in each day and it's just really difficult. The pressure is to try and get the jobs done quicker and quicker and quicker, and it's just hard, so we kind of work together to try and build each other up, but the environment itself is difficult at the moment.
This area is the Discharge Lounge, a place where patients well enough to leave hospital can wait in comfort, freeing up beds and wards. It was meant to be only open in winter, but demand is such it's now open all year round.
When we're in contact with the wards on a daily basis, we know that they're wanting to send their patients here and use our bed spaces and chair spaces. We're full, our capacity is 12, but we can be full and then refill again as the day goes on, and we often have a waiting list for patients to come. And you can tell when you step into the ward that how busy they are, and certainly that has increased over the past few years. I've worked in ARI for 16 years and things have changed a lot in those years.
Everyone working in these wards is doing all they can to help those most in need. But they're drained, tired and already stretched ahead of what's expected to be a difficult winter. Brandon Cook, STV News.
A Glasgow filmmaker is taking Scottish wildlife to the international stage after winning a prestigious National Geographic Award. And now Libby Penman wants to show how climate change is affecting nature here at home, as Caroline Lewis reports.
She's been showcasing Glasgow's wild side for years. And for filmmaker Libby Penman, home will always be where her heart is.
My sort of journey with wildlife filmmaking is totally rooted in Scotland. Mostly everything I film is in Scotland. My favourite to film by miles is birds of prey that we have here. Like some of my favourite moments filming wildlife is filming peregrine falcons in Glasgow. That's the fastest animal in the world. I think there's some amazing animals here. We just maybe don't know about it because we're always watching programmes about like far-flung parts of the world.
She wants to show others what Scotland has to offer. And she's already got the thumbs up from some big names, as her idea won a National Geographic competition and £6,000 to get it off the ground.
My idea was really looking at the climate crisis and the nature emergency, but from the perspectives of two different generations of wildlife filmmakers. So there's wildlife filmmakers like Doug Allen that I really look up to, also from Fife. We're nearly half a century apart in age, but that's what I thought would be really interesting because we can learn from what's happened and, you know, bringing new ideas to the table to move forward.
She hopes to not just inspire important conversations, but inspire others to pick up a camera as well.
For me, like, constantly highlighting that there is awesome stuff here is really important to me. It makes it more accessible to anybody that's watching thinking, well, I could go film that because, you know, it's literally on my doorstep.
Libby is planning to start filming next year and take Scotland's wildlife from Glasgow to the global stage. Caroline Lewis, STV News.
To the sport now with Ronnie.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sports, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Any other goals will keep you up to date. Now, Hampden Park has been included on a list of stadia as part of the UK and Ireland bid to host the Euros in 2028. The National Stadium is the only Scottish venue on the list and previously helped host the European Championships last year. Celtic captain Callum McGregor says the tour of Australia will be crucial for his recovery as he returns from injury for the first time in more than 5 weeks. McGregor picked up a knee knock in the Champions League but has joined his teammates in Oz. Celtic will play Sydney tomorrow before facing Everton on Sunday. Conor Barron says he's eyeing progression to the Scotland senior squad and is adamant the under-21 level is a great platform to grow. The Aberdeen midfielder is part of Scott Gemmell's side for the friendly against Iceland tomorrow and says it's a dream come true to play for his country.
It's always an honour to get called up and play for your national team, whatever level that is, throughout the youth age groups, or eventually if you do get that call up to the main squad, and that's the aim for me. That's where I want to be. It's a great platform because he's shown in the past that you'll give boys a chance if they're doing well. So yeah, that's everybody's aim in this squad. I'm sure it is, and it's definitely mine too.
Rugby, and Scotland's Sione Tuipulotu says that this weekend's final autumn test against Argentina is win at all costs. The Scots have been stung by narrow defeats to Australia and New Zealand this month, but want to finish on a high by avenging their summer series loss in Argentina earlier this year.
You know, it's a massive motivation this week, and I suppose there is also the factor of that there's a lot of the players that weren't really available to us in the summer that are available to us now. Ultimately, we need to win this weekend, and that's just plain simple like that. I think we're going into this weekend with the fact that we've just got to win at all costs.
We need to be more consistent sometimes, but we look forward to come here in this stadium with this team We play against them in summer in Argentina. We know them, they know us. I think it's going to be a good battle.
Finally tonight, Scotland has been named the best golf destination in the world. It's the first time in the 9-year history of the World Golf Awards that we've scooped the top prize. So where else could we send our reporter Stephanie Daly than to the home of golf at St Andrews?
November at the Old Course. Perfect conditions for golf and to reflect on a momentous year for the sport. 4 months after staging the historic 150th Open Championship, Scotland has secured its very own hole-in-one after being named both Europe and the world's best golfing destination at the World Golf Awards in Abu Dhabi. This year has also seen Scotland be the backdrop for the Women's Open at Muirfield, the Senior Open at Gleneagles and the star-studded Dunhill Links.
We've got an incredible reputation, we've got so much history and heritage here where the game began, and then I think it's the diversity of choice we've got. We've got so many different golf courses across Scotland that offer so many entry points for visitors to have a unique experience.
Well, here, the Old Course in St Andrews is the oldest course in the world and home to the Royal and Ancient, world-renowned as the home of golf. It's little wonder then that golfers from around the world are desperate to play here.
I'm from Australia. I'm on holidays just finished all my uni up, so I'm on a 2-month-long trek around Europe. I'm an absolute golf nut, so Scotland was on the top of the list. Had to come here and have a hit, so absolutely stoked to be here. It's awesome.
We're a father and son road trip. I'm half Scottish.
We come from Norway, both of us. He introduced me to golf almost 20 years ago, and since then it's always been a dream to come here and see the course.
I'm from Chile, and I love playing golf in Scotland, especially here. St Andrews is the place, Even Tiger Woods said, if you want to play somewhere, it's got to be here.
It's just like an experience I don't think you would get anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's
very open
Yeah.
for people. I think they're very welcoming for everybody to just come and give it a go.
And it's so much more casual than home. You can bring your dog basically everywhere. And you're so much closer to the elements. It's windy here every day or it rains. You get such different conditions all the time. When I had to make uni decision, this was definitely a deciding factor to be able to play here.
Golf may be a sport steeped in history in Scotland, but is one that also appears to have a very bright future. Stephanie Daly, STV News.
And we'll leave you tonight with good news. Super John McGinn has got one back for Scotland. The score with that left-footed shot, as you can see, is Turkey 2, Scotland 1.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sports, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Now Sean has the weather forecast.
Well, there's yesterday's rain between us and Norway. It's been affecting Shetland through much of the day. For most of us, though, a much better day. A lot of dry weather with sunshine, a few showers in the west. But, here we go again. Another band of rain coming into the south of England, and that's going to be heading our way in the next few days. Yet more heavy rain, the risk of some flooding issues in places, and also some strong winds as well. Let's look at the forecast.
Watch out for a sudden temperature drop. TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
So we're going to see a return to rain over the next couple of days and stronger winds as well, but pretty unusual. The worst of the rain and the strong winds are not going to be for us in the west. They're going to be further east. They'll see an awful lot of rain, particularly around East Lothian and also Angus and Aberdeenshire. But yes, there'll still be some for us. But at least through tonight, most of the showers that we've seen developing across western parts today easing away, and thank goodness it's been a much better day. Should be a dry evening, clear spells, and again it's going to be a pretty chilly one. But yes, chilly 2 to 4, what we should expect at this time of year. It's just been so mild recently that does feel cold, but it's where we should be in this point in November. Now tomorrow across likes of West Lothian, Stirling, Falkirk, Clickmannanshire, there will be some outbreaks of rain through the day. That rain will spread its way westwards, but expect for the Call, Tiree area, Jura, Isla, probably across Arran, Kintyre. We hang on to drier and brighter weather here until later on in the afternoon, and then we'll start to see a bit more cloud and shower outbreaks of rain. But wettest the further east we go, also windiest as well. Temperatures about 9 or 10 degrees Celsius. Now, the weather fronts are stuck with us on Friday, but once again, the worst of the rain will be around northern and eastern areas. But even here, it should start to clear up later on the day. We'll see the best of the brighter weather, staying on the chilly side as well with the cloud and the rain. Saturday looking like a much better day. A little bit of rain still in the east, but driest again in the west.
TUI Blue Hotels. Sponsor STV Weather.
And finally this week, the Edinburgh Playhouse has been transformed into a city full of mobsters, showgirls and dreamers as Bugsy Malone swings into town.
Yes, that's right. It's a classic film that made Jodie Foster a star and introduced us to characters like Fat Sam and Dandy Dan. Polly Bartlett went to meet the cast, bringing Prohibition-era New York to a theatre near you.
Anybody who is, anybody will soon walk through that door at Fat Sam's Grand Slam.
New York, 1929, and Fat Sam's Speakeasy is open for business. Based on the hit gangster movie, Bugsy Malone is put on by mini mobsters, with children and young actors taking on the lead roles.
We've got gangsters, showgirls, boxers, literally everything you can imagine we've got in the show.
It's so nice when we're all clapping at the end and like you just look out and everybody's like clapping along with you, and sometimes they're like singing along, and it's like, because everyone knows the songs, you know what I mean? Because they're just like, they've grown up listening to them.
It looks like New York, but this is in fact Edinburgh, and the cast are busy adding the finishing touches ahead of opening night. It will be a special moment for Aberdonian actor Rue Fisher, who was inspired to take up musical theatre after coming here as a child.
Honestly, it's crazy. I got off the train the other day and my lungs just expanded again, and I was like, yep. This is it, we're back. And we played in Glasgow earlier in the year, which was amazing. My family got to come down, did the 3-and-a-bit-hour journey from Aberdeen to get there on time. But the Edinburgh Playhouse, like, that's insane, you know? It's that full circle moment of sitting out there watching Cats in, like, 2006, you know? That's, like, what makes it all worth it, you know?
Rue and the cast will have a spring in their step when they take to the boards this evening, because this gangster musical is criminally good fun.
Flapper girls, gangsters, boxing people, all sorts. Children, incredibly talented children. Angel Delight, the works, you name it, it's got it.
With little practice,
This show has everything from splurge guns and custard pies to dances and fabulous costumes. It's on until the 20th of November, so make sure not to miss it.
we're the very best at the impact.
Polly Bartlett, STV News, Edinburgh.
Or as we know, Blousey Brown.
Or Tallulah, or is that just your nickname?
Thanks for watching. Good night.
Bye-bye.